the 20 and the 10, and look at that, he hurdles his way into the...
Hello, everybody. Welcome to 49ers University. Vinny and I finally decided that we're going to have a name. We've been putting this off for weeks, honestly. I feel like this is more my fault than anything. But no, you know what? Fine, it's equal. But let's say this, Vinny. I think we came up with a fantastic name. If anyone doesn't know, Vinny and I are both at a university right now. I'm at Florida State University. Vinny is over at Gonzaga, which, by the way, how about them Florida State Seminoles?
Hey, thank you.
I
was going to say, man, thank you for helping us in our, helping us lock up the number one and like helping us give us a little more room for that. We appreciate it from Florida State.
Yesterday. Hey, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to give Coach K a riding off gift to ride off into the sunset. Just one last gift from Florida State for you, Coach K. But, my 49ers beat the Cowboys. My men's basketball team beats Duke. I don't think the Yankees play anytime soon. I don't think the Heat play the Lakers. But, man, I feel like I'm on a roll right now. I'm on, like, cloud nine. It's 49ers Packers week, Vinny. We'll talk a little bit about last week's game. We'll definitely refer to what was one of the wildest 49ers games I've ever watched in my entire life. Really, Vinny, I don't know about you, but personally for me, that was one of the biggest roller coasters, emotionally at least, that I've ever watched as a 49ers fan. And I remember 2019 very vividly. That to me was, man, that was something else.
Yeah, dude, especially like, God, it was 16-7 at half. And you're thinking still you're on the edge of your seat, like two scores, and you're wondering like, and that was like a big stop that they got before the end of the half. And you're thinking, okay, Dallas is going to get the ball. They're going to score on this first drive. But then it was a 3-and-out, and they were able to go 23-7. And you're just waiting for the sucker punch from the 49ers, but it never came. And the sucker punch came from the Cowboys, but it was against not the 49ers, but themselves. And it was just like it had every emotion that you had in this game. And it was definitely fun watching. And, of course, as always, as has been for every week, the headline was Jimmy Garoppolo and everything like that. But I mean, honestly, I think the negative more so this game for me was that I wasn't able to enjoy this playoff win as much. I don't think, just because of like the immediate like.
It was more relief, wasn't it? Than
it was more relief in a way, but also like I think because of like obviously like the stuff that's with Garoppolo and everyone clearly has their opinions on him. I think that kind of like takes away from the fact that they won a road playoff game and they're still in the playoffs, and that they're still going to keep. Like nothing's going to change from like this point on with like, it hasn't been changing. And if you don't think it's going to change, like there's nothing that's going to change now in terms of the quarterback. If Jimmy Garoppolo is good enough to play, he's going to play. And it is what it is with him. And you're just going to have to take it.
A great point, Vinny. A few weeks ago, I was on here and I was writing saying, this looks like a wasted season for the 49ers. I really believe that. And I'm not saying it isn't. I don't want to go back on my word, but wow, are they trying to prove me wrong? And I think they're doing a great job at it because they are really making the most of this season. And Vinny, I think this is the best roster in football. I was very highly critical of this team early on when they were 3-5. We talked about it. We questioned the DBs, right? We questioned how good the defensive line really was outside of Nick Bosa. And now it seems like the only question we have right now about the two questions, I should say, are the two questions we've had all season, which are special teams and Jimmy Garoppolo. Because I think outside of those two issues, Vinny, this is the best team in football, the best roster in football, and the best coaching staff maybe in the National Football League right now. They are electric, and I want to shout out two people specifically, D'Amico Ryans and Deebo Samuel, because man, are they just excellent for the 49ers, and they are a huge reason. I think the main reason the 49ers are still in contention right now. But Vinny, you mentioned the man himself, and I can't keep us waiting any longer. Let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo and some of the 49ers quarterback news. I am switching over here. So Grant brought this up, or someone else did in the press conference the other day. They asked Jimmy Garoppolo if his throws get affected
That's funny.
By the injury, and he said, "Oh yeah, of course it did." Kyle Shanahan didn't have the same thoughts, and I think it's just interesting, Vinny, that this team is so disconnected right now, and that the quarterback, their head coach, are saying two different things. And they've been communicating really two different things since Jimmy Garoppolo's had this thumb injury, Vinny. It's just interesting, the dynamic to see between the team and the player, and just everything that's been going on.
And I think the crazy thing about it is that they're still able to work with it, and they're still able to ultimately get the job done and get wins, which is the job of the team, right? And that's just like, that's the crazy thing, I think, with all of this. And I think that's super funny, like reading this tweet, just like how they're so like, they're two different, like obviously different takes, but at the same time, Kyle Shanahan wanted and had a factor in picking Jimmy Garoppolo as his guy. So clearly that there is something there that is, I think clicking, and I think it is, apparent in winning a playoff game. Like winning a playoff game on the road is not easy to do.
No, it isn't.
And they were able to do it.
Let's just.
I'm not saying it's because of Garoppolo.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying he was good in that. He was decent in that first half. I think
up until that Brandon Nyuk 3rd and 11 throw, really, you couldn't point to much that you would be very unhappy with from Jimmy Garoppolo, because he's doing exactly what you ask him to do, exactly what you want him to do. I think people overthink it, Vinny, sometimes. I always go back to the Bill Belichick mantra: do your job, right? Do your job. And the problem is in that second half, Jimmy was going beyond doing his job. He was doing more than he had to do. And also, I think Kyle deserves a little more criticism for throwing the ball as much as they did in the second half, throwing it on 2nd and 10, putting Jimmy in that kind of position, 3rd and 11. Clearly Kyle doesn't trust Jimmy, but then you ask Jimmy to do these very hard things that you need him to do in certain situations, and it doesn't work out. Listen, I know we love to blame Jimmy, and I'll blame Jimmy just as much as the next guy for what he's at fault for, but I think people are diverting their energy in the wrong way, Vinny. They should be focusing more on the organization, who is putting him out here, who's keeping him injured, who's continuing to play him when they do have another option, right? And look, I'm not saying that I know one thing would work out a certain way, or they would be better or the 49ers would be better with Trey Lance. I'm not saying I know that. But what I am saying is that blaming Jimmy Garoppolo isn't going to – it's not his fault. It's not – I think of that scene from Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault, Jimmy. It's the organization's fault.
Well, I think that's the thing too. People are more upset of like Jimmy playing bad because he's hurt. And like when you're players aren't going to like – and I think it's a credit – honestly, like with this, like I think you should like credit Jimmy for wanting to play injured, wanting to be out there playing for those guys, because he's not going to be sitting there thinking, because we'd be on him. I think we'd be on him more if it was like, yo, you could have played this game, but you decided not to. Like he wants to play, and it is ultimately like if you are just to get upset, like don't get upset at Jimmy for playing bad, for getting hurt. Get upset at him being in the game in the first place. But
the organization is the one who's at fault, Vinny. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think along with that, though, I think this it's crazy for me to say this, right? I think at this point of the year, if you were to ask me this like week 5, week 6, I would say like the opposite answer. But I think at this point of the year, playing an injured Jimmy Garoppolo, I think is a little bit better than playing Trey Lance at this point. Just because
I wholeheartedly agree.
I just think that you're like you would have already been asking Trey Lance so much to do what Jimmy Garoppolo has done this year, to go 10-7 and go on the road and win a playoff game. That is a lot to ask from your rookie quarterback. And quite honestly, if they were able to do that this year, the 49ers trade like hit already. Like if they were to do that this year, like
if
Trey
they
Lance
made the playoffs with Trey Lance and
they won this game
under his belt,
he'd be the MVP within the few years. Like that's like what we're talking about in terms of like
people are talking about Jamar Chase Rookie of the Year. Man,
Trey Lance would be running away with Rookie of the Year. It wouldn't even be close.
It wouldn't.
So like and who knows if Jimmy Garoppolo is able to play. And the only circumstance where Trey Lance should be playing in these games is that if he absolutely has to play.
Yeah, if Jimmy Garoppolo physically can't play, Trey Lance should start. Otherwise, there is no way they should put Trey Lance in, even if Jimmy Garoppolo is compromised. And Vinny, this is something we covered a few weeks ago, right? We talked about this when he was playing against the Houston Texans. This is not the situation we wanted for Trey Lance. This is not the situation the 49ers wanted for Trey Lance. All season, their plan was to sit, rest him, develop him. You don't have to agree with that. But what you do have to admire about what they've done so far is they've been very consistent with that in the entire way. They haven't changed course just because Jimmy Garoppolo's got slightly injured. And I think really that's for Trey Lance's benefit more than anything. Look, I understand it's about doing the most you can to win. But at the end of the day, the 49ers franchise is going to be centered around Trey Lance. So doing what's best for him is doing what's best for the 49ers. And even if that's not playing him this year, that might be the right course of action. And truly, we'll never know the answer to that question. And people keep on arguing about it, Vinny, over and over and over. And really,
and there's a reason why we're talking about it and not making these decisions. Because clearly, like, we can argue all day long about the plan that they had originally and how it would have changed things differently. But the plan that they have now, it worked.
Yeah.
The plan that they had this season worked. And I think that's where, a couple of weeks ago, I kind of talked about Kyle Shanahan and his decision-making and how that, like, I think it's more so like the critiques that you would have. Like, I don't think you can really critique him honestly much in the play calling. That's just a matter of like execution. And sometimes plays just don't happen.
As many people have said, Vinny, like a head coach, you can very much criticize Shanahan's decision-making overall.
Yeah. And I think with that, though, I don't know if he's necessarily making the wrong decisions. I think more so, like in my opinion, it's more of he takes too long to make the right one. And I think you saw that with
personnel.
Really. And I think I'm sorry.
I was saying the 49ers personnel, you nailed that with that point right there. I mean, look,
because I think
Brandon Nyuk, Jennings, Ambry, I mean, the list goes on.
Like they're picking the right, and even guys that are doing good in other like places, right? Like Kendrick Bourne. Look at how well he did for the Patriots. Got their butts kicked. He was probably their best player that day.
He was.
And then you even look at Jerick McKinnon. Look at
Jerick McKinnon.
Look at how well he's doing.
Jet McKinnon.
Like he's like, and I think the thing that deterred that more specifically was just the injury front,
right?
And like because you saw what Jerick McKinnon is able to do, like in that system,
absolutely.
Right? And maybe it's the system that didn't work for him, but like Shanahan clearly, there was a reason why they signed McKinnon in the first place because that was what they were hoping for from him. But when you have 2 ACL tears in a matter of 2 years, it's just so hard to like. It's going to take a year for you to like get back into it. So like I think the one thing that you do, like, I think the worst, like if we're talking like Shanahan related in personnel, I think the thing that like you could like kind of like have a little like smudge on it for is like 2017 when he is first hired. The guy, rather than like trying to like get this new rookie quarterback, trying to potentially going for Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, he went with Brian Hoyer. I think that's like the one like real blemish that I think that like he specifically has in terms of his personnel, and maybe even that Solomon Thomas pick. Otherwise, like literally after like those like picks, they've hit on like a lot of these other picks as well. I mean, it's like a broken record talking about all the late round picks that they've hit.
Right.
And I think we're starting to see the early round picks hit a little bit more as well.
Absolutely.
Right. We're obviously, Nick Bosa.
Ambry Thomas.
Ambry Thomas is that 3rd round pick. We haven't seen much from Aaron Banks yet, but I mean, Trey Lance seems like the right guy.
Yeah.
Debo Samuel in the 2nd round. I even think the Jalen Hurd pick, maybe you can criticize him for that. But honestly, I think the evaluation, I think the 49ers do their evaluations right in terms of their players and like picking them. It's just sometimes those players like don't end up. And I think one of those other moves as well is the trade for D Ford. D Ford on this roster when he is fully healthy is a top 10 player on this roster. He's one of the 10 best players on this team, undoubtedly, in my opinion, just how unique he is and what he's able to do. But it's just with the injury stuff that happened, it wasn't able to come to full circle. And that's where I think they did the right evaluation in wanting to get D Ford in the building in the first place. I think they just took too long to realize that they kind of got him, like it was time for him to go in a way. So that's where that's all just to say, like, heading into this week, I think it's going to be fun to see, how all these players play in these, high stakes conditions now, especially just the aura and the environment of playing in Lambeau in December, man. I just looked at the weather. It's going to be like a low of 2 degrees and a high of 15. So that'll be nice and fun. And I think, honestly, that kind of plays into the 49ers' hands a little bit with the way that they play. So it'll be fun.
I agree. And you know what? Let's get right into this matchup, Vinny, because we've been talking about it a little bit, but we're going to do a full breakdown of this Packers-49ers matchup. We got to start on the 49ers offensive side. Let's start with the 49ers offensive line against this Packers defensive line, right? Some differences from week 3, Vinny, first off, and we'll run through this for every single position group. The 49ers have a new right tackle. It's Tom Compton. Mike McGlinchey is no longer the right tackle. Well, he exists still. He's hurt. But Tom Compton is now the starting right tackle for San Francisco 49ers. And you know what? For the Green Bay Packers, I'm looking at this, Vinny, from week 3. Kenny Clark, Preston Smith were the ones who were really getting a lot of pressure on the 49ers. They combined for 11 total pressures against the 49ers. But really, the key pass rusher for the Packers this season, the guy who's led them in pressures, is Rashawn Gary. He's been excellent. And of recent, in the last few weeks, he's been really, really, really good. And I believe they'll also be getting Zadarius Smith back as well. So this is going to be a fascinating matchup. We obviously know that this 49ers offensive line is really great at run blocking. Trent Williams, one of the highest graded run blocker in PFF history, the highest graded offensive lineman in PFF history. Like Tomlinson is having a hell of a season. Alex Mack really has come on in these last back half of the season. Vinny, I think this is a good pass matchup for the 49ers in the sense that they're going to challenge them, but this isn't necessarily a front that I think is going to completely overwhelm them in pass protection, although it could get out of hand in certain situations.
Yeah, and I think obviously, like in those pass situations, I don't know if we're going to see as much like passing from the 49ers in particular. No. I mean, I don't think it's going to be like a NFC Championship 2019. Like they're throwing the ball more than 8 times, and the Packers are going to do everything to make sure that Jimmy Garoppolo is throwing the ball more than 8 times. So I think obviously I think Zadarius Smith is coming back this week as well, which I think is big for them. And, adding to that and, Kenny Clark, Alex Mack versus Kenny Clark, Alex Mack and Daniel Brunskill in particular versus Kenny Clark is going to be the matchup that I'm looking for. Maybe they try to in terms of running the ball, maybe they try to do what they do with Aaron Donald in the sense that you kind of just got to run at him more so than run away from them so that they can make those plays. And ultimately, because I think in terms of like the running game as well, I think the 49ers are like, or the Packers defense, excuse me, is like 28th in DVOA. So they're not a very good run defense.
No.
So once they can get to that second level, I think that's where they're going to make their noise. So this battle in the trenches is going to be really, really important. Obviously, I'm not just saying this as a 49ers fan, but when you have Trent Williams on your team, I have to give you the edge there. And I think that's where we can really see.
Well, and Trent Williams is playing great, Vinny, but you know what? I think people don't give him enough credit for leading this offensive line, right? I think people talked about him as a lack of leadership, right? They
in the beginning, last year in particular as well, just because he was newer and everyone had higher expectations.
He wasn't long-term signed, right? It was all these situations. Now you look at the combination of him and a guy like Laken Tomlinson, what they built on that left side of the defense of the offensive line. It's huge for the 49ers, the way they can move people. I mean, really, Laken Tomlinson is going to be the number one free agent for the 49ers in terms of necessity and importance. So this is a really good 49ers offensive line, and I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. But one, you know what, Vinny, I think they should dominate this matchup, especially from what we've seen from this offensive line. We'll certainly see how Zadarius Smith affects this all. Like you said, it's going to be fascinating. I really think that Kenny Clark inside matchup, to me, that's the best matchup I'm looking at.
And going back to Trent Williams a little bit, I tweeted this yesterday. And like obviously there's been the success of Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, all these guys. For me, Trent Williams is the best player on this team. And I think Trent Williams, that is the biggest steal, I think, in recent 49ers trades history. It's got to be. You're talking about a third and a fifth round pick for arguably a top 10, 15 player in the entire NFL. Like, Trent Williams is like, we talk about Deebo being one of one, and I think that's very true. And I don't think there's anyone even close to how good Trent Williams is.
And I think you nailed it right there, Vinny. He is, not only is he great, but the difference between him and the next
guy,
that distance is further than any other position.
Like Bakhtiari, I think is really good, and I think he's that closest guy that you get. But I still think there's a bit of a difference between Trent Williams and him, and it's run blocking, it's pass blocking, it's athleticism to be able to move at that size. Like I think
it was a third and a fifth, but
I thought it was a third.
We're around the same zone here, but the same.
Either way, it's a steal. It's a steal.
Absolutely.
Trent Williams is worth a.
I think it's more of a question of that contract, really, Vinny, right? Because you are paying him all that money, and I think so far
I think he's worth every penny.
Exactly, he is well worth that money. I think he's proven. Even though you are paying him a hell of a lot of money, he's well worth that money. And I think
and it's easy, and it's real quick. It's easy to look at the impact without Deebo and without Trent Williams. And you saw that they could win a game without Trent Williams because they did it in the high stakes game that Rams game. And maybe you can argue, and my argument isn't who's more valuable, because I think over time, if you were to see Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams miss the same amount of time, where would the 49ers be worse? I think they would be worse without Trent Williams in that same time more so than Deebo Samuel, just because yes, you're not able to scheme as much of the same things without Deebo Samuel, but that's something that you're able to change the scheme more so for your receivers, more so than your offensive line. I think Deebo Samuel, I don't think he's a replaceable player on this team, but I think he's more replaceable than a guy like Trent Williams over the stretch of a certain amount of games.
Fair. Hey,
that's my opinion.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I certainly understand where you're coming from. And you know what? You're talking about Deebo Samuel right now, Vinny. That kind of leads us perfectly to what we're going to be talking about next. And we're going to be going position by position, guys. So if you want to leave comments, questions, we might try and get to them at the end of each topic. But we're going to be rolling through these so we can get through all of them by the end of this hour. Vinny, let's talk about the 49ers wide receivers. You mentioned Deebo Samuel, but this is going to be a fascinating matchup. Obviously, the 49ers aren't going to be passing the ball much. We don't anticipate this being a heavy passing game. But you know what's very important, Vinny? 49ers have one of the best run blocking wide receivers in the NFL. Jawan Jennings grades out as the second best wide receiver in terms of run blocking grade per PFF. He's been excellent for this team as of late, obviously coming on as a slot receiver, but really in this sort of game, there's going to need to be a few catches made by these 49ers wide receivers.
Yeah.
And with Jair Alexander back, it certainly doesn't make that task any easier for them. But at the end of the day, the important thing for the 49ers wide receivers isn't so much the vertical passing game as it is the misdirection and as it is confusing this Packers defense. So when you see guys like Leighton Vander Esch and Micah Parsons last week, just taking a hair second, kind of to see what's going on. Are they running? Are they passing? What's Deebo Samuel doing running across the formation? Is Elijah Mitchell going that way? That to me is going to be the biggest part of this matchup for the 49ers, because that misdirection and that deception that Kyle creates and the conflict he creates for defenders, it's going to be the thing that's going to help propel them over the top if they do win this game against the Packers. It's the identity of this team. It's what makes them who they are.
Yeah, and looking at their cornerback depth, I think Jair is supposed to be back this week, if I'm not mistaken.
They're going to have Bakhtiari, Smith, and Alexander back all for this game.
Will Whitney Merciless be back or no? I don't know if he's as good as he was.
I don't believe so, but Randall Cobb should be back. He just got activated and got the green light today, okay. So that's another one.
So, I mean, you look, obviously, like the big name that you talk about when you talk about the secondary is Jair Alexander, I think.
Absolutely.
Like he's one of the 5 best corners in the NFL, and I think you'll probably look at him looking more towards Deebo. He'll probably stay they'll just follow him around the field. And I think, a guy that's pretty underrated that I think even could be a better matchup in this game is Brandon Nyuk versus Eric Stokes. I think Eric Stokes is, they decided to pick a cornerback in Stokes over a wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers obviously was a little upset, but I think over time you kind of saw that, he's not as you're not going to really change Aaron Rodgers' opinion at this point on whether doing anything to stay or go, anything like that. So I think this was a good pick for them, and I think he got better over the weeks, and I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup between 2 younger receivers in Brandon Ayuk and Eric Stokes. But I think, in terms of other defense, the one, position that we haven't talked about yet is those linebackers of Green Bay, and one in particular in Devondre Campbell. Voted to the All-Pro. He was on the All-Pro team this year. He was in Arizona before.
Man.
Yeah,
he's been really good in coverage.
He was in Arizona before, and I remember he caused the 49ers some trouble in those games last year. So I think another matchup is Devondre Campbell in coverage versus George Kittle. And I think we've been saying it. I feel like we've been saying it for a couple of weeks now. We're waiting for that George Kittle game. Maybe it comes here in the passing game. I think
really this is the right matchup, Vinny. Although I will say, like you just mentioned, it might be hindered by the fact of the weather, the conditions of the game plan for the 49ers. But listen, we know Deebo Samuel's going to get his. Brandon Ayuk has been really good lately. But Jawan Jennings has really been cutting into some of the production that we see out of George Kittle. People I see asking what's happening to George Kittle. Where is he? 49ers have only so many pass attempts to go around, Vinny. And I think the fact is that in particular, these last few matchups for George Kittle, they just haven't been the most ideal matchup for the 49ers to take advantage of that mismatch that he presents. But this, Vinny, this feels like that matchup to potentially take advantage of it, even though, like I said, with that qualifier of that weather is going to be a factor.
Yeah, definitely. And I think overall, this could be just a mismatch of 49ers offense versus Packers defense in general. Absolutely. I don't think in this weather as well. I think someone just mentioned in the comments, trying to tackle guys like Deebo Samuel, Elijah Mitchell, George Kittle in this cold weather, wanting to run down your throat. That's not going to be something that they're going to be looking forward to do. And I get it. Green Bay's used to playing in Lambeau, so it's not like a new thing for them or anything like that. But it'll be fun to see how this all plays out for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating matchup in that sense. Obviously, we would love to see maybe a neutral site game in a dome where, hey, maybe they can air it out more. This game be more interesting in that matchup. But let's get to the matchup that we've kind of been alluding to but haven't really talked about yet. Let's talk about this 49ers run game. This is going to be the key to the game for the 49ers on offense. This Packers run defense you mentioned, not been great lately. They, like you said, 24th in DVOA. Getting Zadarius Smith back, Merciless back. But let's talk about this, Vinny. When the 49ers played the Packers, Elijah Mitchell pretty much didn't play at all. I don't even think he played at all. No,
Trey Sermon started.
Right, Trey Sermon started. No Jeff Wilson Jr. for the 49ers. Even JaMychal Hasty wasn't playing during that time. He's their third down pass catching back now. How do you think this is going to be? Oh, one more thing I didn't even mention. The 49ers weren't handing the ball to Deebo Samuel back in week 3, right? So to me, Vinny, you can go back and watch that week 3 matchup all you want. This 49ers run game is completely different from what the Packers saw.
And this 49ers team is completely different from week 3 versus that Packers team. And I think that Packers team is also different from that game as well compared to this game. So, yeah, it's funny. Akash tweeted this morning that, this is going to be a Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel game. And then Grant replied, like, isn't that every game? Does every game feel like an Elijah Mitchell, Deebo Samuel game? But I think it's honestly just as simple as that. And it's just like we talked about before, the cold inclement weather, you may not be as thrown to wanting to pass the ball as much. And maybe, and like logistically, that just may make more sense in this game to do so, just because you don't like want to risk potential turnovers throwing the ball and in this kind of weather. So I think it all just like plays to the 49ers favor. And I think it's up to them to kind of, set the tone and not get complacent, because they know that they can run all over this team. This happened before. And I think they weren't even like that bad running. I want to look at
first in that week 3 matchup.
I'm gonna look up that rushing stats.
Yeah, they didn't do a terrible job versus Green Bay in week 3 in terms of rushing. But I think what we're saying, Vinny, is with the 49ers, they have the most dynamic, diverse run game in the NFL. And I feel like that really hadn't been put on full display up until after the bye week, right? This is a team that I think was still getting implementing some of these things that we're seeing, the tosses, the inside zone, the outside zone, just all the diversity that Kyle Shanahan has been presenting in the last month or so of the season, including the playoffs. It's something that, look, the 49ers don't have Raheem Mostert against the Packers this week, but what Deebo Samuel provides, the speed, the elusiveness at the edge, the ability to just outrun everybody, they still kind of have that Raheem Mostert factor, right? With a guy like Deebo Samuel, he's going to do it, but he's going to do even more than that, Vinny. He is going to be more than just a great back who can get to the edge and who can run away from everybody, because he is the best weapon in the NFL.
And I think looking at that week 3 game versus like what it looks like, statistically from this game, I have to go back and like watch the, highlights, I guess, of it, but it kind of looked like they abandoned the run a little bit in that week 3 game.
Did.
Garoppolo had 40 attempts passing, obviously a lot more than what we're typically expect of him. But
if we see that Sunday, game over.
And then the team finished with 21 carries for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of them coming from Trey Lance. And Deebo Samuel had 2 carries for 0 yards.
Exactly.
And the highest guy that they had was Trey Sermon, 10 carries for 31 yards. So it looks like they kind of abandoned the run on that game, if I remember correctly. But I think looking at this game and looking what they've done over these last couple of weeks, they haven't abandoned that run, and they stick to that identity. And I think that's something that will go to their advantage, and they still have to establish it early, obviously.
Right.
But I think this is where, again, this is a matchup very much in the 49ers' favor, and it's up to them to not get complacent about it.
I agree. And you know what the great thing is they don't, like I said earlier, they're so diverse in their scheme in terms of running, Vinny, that if the inside zone isn't working for them, it doesn't matter. If the outside zone isn't working for them, it doesn't matter because they can play every single type of run fit on offense. They can design everything they want.
Yeah, and with the 49ers, like, because of that creativity of what they can do on the run game, it gives them more flexibility on what they can do as compared to other teams that you see playing cold weather, where a lot of it is just like, running up the middle and everything like that. Like, and the good thing is the 49ers don't have to create a game plan for these creative things because they're already doing that in their scheme that they already have.
That is the game plan, right? And now that with the weather, just adding on to that, Vinny, it just gives them that extra advantage that we've been talking about. The fact that they do have to run the ball as much as they humanly can.
Like Debo Samuel and Elijah Mitchell will obviously get touches this game. But I think
guys like Jeff Wilson Jr., Hasty, Nyuk, Kittle, give them all carries.
That's what I'm saying. Juice. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see George Kittle and Brandon Nyuk get touches in the run game, and even Kyle Juszczyk trying to find creative ways to.
Nyuk got one of his first jet sweeps of the season last week against Dallas.
Sometimes
certainly something that could be implemented more.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like the best play the 49ers run is a fullback dive.
Yeah,
honestly,
it does.
Like sometimes that's like just as raw, and maybe we'll see the coveted Garoppolo QB sneak. I don't know if obviously last week it had a little bit of a blunder because of for whatever reason. But maybe we'll see that a little more in those short yardage, 3rd and 1, the 3rd and inches situations that they find themselves a lot in, which is a very good thing.
Yeah, as long as they get a line before they snap, it'll be fine. Moving on to the flip side of this, we've been talking about the 49ers offense at length. Let's talk about the best defense in football. The 49ers defense is electric right now. DeMeco Ryans, Vinny, has been in his bag, right? Everyone talks about Kyle Shanahan being in his bag. DeMeco Ryans has been in his bag these last few weeks. This is, to me, the number one defense in football. They're the most balanced they've ever been all season. Let's go back to that first matchup because, to me, Vinny, this is going to be one of the biggest differences. And we were going to talk about the Packers wide receivers versus 49ers DBs, but let's just combine that into what we're talking about here because for Aaron Rodgers versus 49ers defense, it's going to be a very different matchup. In that last game, Josh Norman, 19 coverage snaps. Diamador Lenore was starting over Ambry Thomas, if you recall. K'Wan Williams only had 6 snaps. He got hurt early in the game, was replaced by Dante Johnson. Really, the two biggest pieces that are the same are Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tart, who we're happy to have, and we're happy to have starting. But, Vinny, with Emmanuel Mosley, Ambry Thomas, K'Wan Williams, Tart, Ward, this is going to be a fascinating matchup for Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, the weather, like we've said many times over, is going to have to play a factor into this game somewhat. But I still think, like, from what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers all season, the pass game for them, it's more than just the passing game. The pass game becomes an extension of the run game and vice versa because they run so many of these tunnel screens. They work around the line of scrimmage. They allow Devontae Adams to be the best at what he does because he is the best at what he does. Between that, Allen Lazard is a great blocker. I mentioned Jawan Jennings earlier. Jawan Jennings are two of the most elite wide receiver, run blockers in the league. But Lazard, Valdez-Scantling, Randall Cobb's going to be back, although who knows what he'll be like at this stage with coming back from that kind of injury. This is going to be a fascinating defense for Aaron Rodgers to face because I think, you go back to that 2019 championship game where Rodgers struggled so much, Vinny. It was because of the pressure that the 49ers were bringing, right? They hit him hard. They hit him early, and they disrupted that Green Bay offense. I don't know if it's going to be quite the same for this game. I think the 49ers will be able to get pressure, be able to cause havoc. And I think that will be a very advantageous matchup for them, Vinny. But I think the secondary, if the 49ers are going to win and succeed, it's going to be in large part, I believe, due to their play. Because I think Aaron Rodgers is going to test them out a lot.
Yeah, and there's two things about this for me. I mentioned him earlier, but Akash Navarothan, a guy who works for Niner Nation, does a lot of great stuff. I suggest you guys check him out. He tweeted these stats about Aaron Rodgers with the clean pocket versus not a clean pocket, right? So when the pocket is kept clean, or when he's not getting hit, 77.1 completion rate, 8.5 yards per attempt, 29 touchdowns, 0 picks, 123.7 rating. I think that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Safe to say. Aaron Rodgers under pressure, 38.4 completion rate, 5.1 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 67.9 rating. So the 49ers, they have to get at him, and they have to get him at him early. And I think and it's been done before in those 2 matchups in 2019.
Yeah.
And even in this, I'm not going to say I don't count the 2020 game where they played against each other. They had literally no one.
Yeah.
Very
different.
It was
it
was a 49ers B team versus that Packers team.
But even Vinny, let's talk about
even
the week 3 matchup. I think the biggest difference to me, Vinny, is DeMeco Ryans was a new coordinator when we started this
He's
season.
a lot better, yes.
Not only is he a lot better, but he's incredibly more aggressive, Vinny. He has been calling cover 0 against teams like Dallas. He's blitzing Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shaair, Jimmy Ward.
That was such a ballsy call, by the way, on that 4th down 0 coverage. You're just sending
cover 0, just saying send
0.
it freaking home, man.
Yeah.
Look,
that's a big call.
Yeah, it is. And those are the type of calls DeMeco Ryans is going to have to make in this game, right, Vinny? You mentioned the pressure, how Aaron Rodgers handles it. Look, depending on Nick Bosa, I still think the 49ers will be able to get pressure alone with their defensive line. But the fact of the matter is they need to do something extra on top of that to go after the most talented quarterback I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I think part of that is, which was my second point, which was I don't think, obviously, the logical thing to do when you're going against a guy like Davante Adams is to double team him. I don't think that's going to serve you any favors, honestly, to double team him. I just think I would because either way, when he's double teamed, he's going to get his catches and he's going to,
I think really the only advantage in double covering him, Vinny, is earlier I talked about how he's an extension of the run game, right? To me, that's where the advantage lies, in that if you want to get to Davante Adams and tackle him early, you need to give him extra attention in that when they have these design plays, they have Allen Lazard blocking, right? They have guys in space moving, they have Bakhtiari back.
Yeah.
You need extra guys to be able to handle that. So I'll disagree with you slightly there, but I understand what you're saying. At the end of the day, you can double Davante Adams. He's gonna get his. You can't stop the greatest receiver.
And I think I would rather have force one of those other guys like your Valdez-Scantlings or Randall Cobb.
Absolutely.
I'd rather shut those guys down more, just so that you're like, okay, beat me with Davante Adams. I'm okay with losing to the best wide receiver quarterback duo in the league. I'm more than satisfied, at least, in having that happen, more so than Valdez-Scantling getting 100 yards because you're double teaming Davante Adams. And obviously that running game is still going to play a factor into it as well. And the run defense for the 49ers has been really good over these last few weeks. So I think that's something that Rich talked about. I think Rich Madrid, he was asked, on Twitter that I saw, would you rather double team Davante Adams, or would you, kind of play single coverage? I think you got to just take your bets with those one-on-ones, because it'll probably be Emmanuel Mosley. And we've seen him, have his fair share against some of the top guys, in the league.
Even if he's lined up against Ambry, look, last week, the Dallas Cowboys were not targeting Ambry Thomas. They were targeting Emmanuel Mosley over and over and over. And with the way they've been playing their corners, it's not like they're going to move those guys around, right? They're not going to shadow Davante Adams with Emmanuel Mosley. That's not what they do. But it's going to be fascinating to see how each of them deals with him.
Again, though, I think we'll see. I think Aaron Rodgers, one thing that I think the good thing about them, the 49ers winning, is that it kind of masks some of their problems, I think, that they have. And I think there's still like room and adjustments to be made, especially in that cornerback room. So I think Aaron Rodgers kind of like knows that, like, that they're still like not the best corners. And I think he's going to try and, put Devontae Adams on Ambry Thomas as much as he can and just try to attack that as much as possible. I think he's going to do that because I think he did that with Lenore in that first week. So,
yeah, no, and it'll be certainly fascinating to see who they pick on, where they line up Devontae Adams, if they put him in the slot to try and take advantage of K1. It's really going to be a game of pick and choose with the Packers passing attack versus this coverage for the 49ers. But let's talk about two more things really quick before we get out of here, Vinny. And first of all, everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, drop a like, subscribe. Check out Vinny's channel in the description below. Subscribe to that. Follow Vinny on Twitter. This is a new title for our show, 49ers University. I hope you all like it. I certainly enjoy it. Vinny, let's talk about what is certainly the strength of the 49ers. Let's talk about this defensive line. This defensive line was struggling early on in the season. In fact, I said many times they aren't getting what they're paying for. I don't want to say I was wrong, Vinny, but since Eric Armstead moved inside from week 8 on, since Arden Key has come on, and Javon Kinlaw has now been out for a while for the 49ers, and I'm not saying it's due to that, but this 49ers pass rush and defensive line is as good as it gets in football.
Yeah, I think so. And Bakhtiari being back for the Packers obviously is going to help them a lot more so than that other guy. But
one thing real quick, Vinny, I just wanted to point this out. In that week 3 matchup versus Green Bay, Eric Armstead lined up 28 of his 48 snaps on the line outside of the offensive tackle on the C gap as a defensive end. I believe
shifted inside now. Yeah.
Yes, since week 8, since they moved him inside, he's had 29 snaps at that outside position, right? So he significantly changed his role, and it's just improved the 49ers because whereas they were playing a guy like Arden Key inside, now they're playing him outside and inside, and they're moving him. They're moving him around, getting really.
They're moving Bosa around too.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like Arden Key, Vinny, got 3 pass rush snaps versus the Packers last time they played. That's not going to happen in this game. The 49ers defensive line is going to have an opportunity.
Yeah, and I don't know if Jordan Willis will be back this week or not.
No, we'll see.
I mean, I think you hope that he is, obviously.
And obviously Nick Bosa is the number one.
And I think I would feel pretty confident that he'd be back. I don't know if
with concussion protocol, you just never know. That's
you never know, right? And you got to take that as seriously as you possibly can.
And it's not like something else like Grant and others have mentioned where you fight through it, you're gonna play hard. No. An independent neurologist has to okay Nick Bosa to play. That is just not gonna happen because the 49ers want Nick Bosa to play.
Yeah, and they're right in making that decision too.
Absolutely.
So I think they still have their way though. Like Charles Omenihu, I still know how to say his name.
You nailed it. Charles Omenihu has been excellent, man. He's been a great.
He's been really good.
Talking about a pickup for the 49ers. I mean, that was a great in-season pickup by John.
They have their guys, and Bosa in a way, obviously your chances are a lot better with Nick Bosa there, but I think that's kind of just like your icing on the cake, which is. Kind of a little weird to say because I think DJ Jones and Eric Armstead are playing well as well. And so, I'd still give the 49ers the D-line edge even without Nick Bosa. Yeah, but I think it'll be a lot harder.
Oh, yeah. It'll be a lot harder, but think about how deep this defensive line is. Guys like Ebukam, Mo Hurst, who hasn't even played, Contavious Street, Kevin Givens. The fact is that, Vinny, the 49ers have 9 defensive linemen will be deploying, maybe even 10 during this game. And it's going to work to their advantage because this is the strength of the team. It'll be interesting to see how David Bakhtiari is when he comes back. But at the end of the day, Vinny, I've heard many people say this. They feel like this is Rodgers' worst offensive line of his career, that this is not the advantage that the Packers want to have versus the 49ers defensive line. And if anything, out of all these positional groups we've gone through, Vinny, to me, this feels like the potential biggest mismatch, no matter if Nick Bosa plays or not, because at the end of the day, like you said, the line is so deep. And guess what? They have the best defensive line coach in the NFL, and Chris Cassera. And all of those guys are going to eat. Eric Armstead especially included, but all those guys have been eating for the 49ers lately. So it's going to be a really good matchup. And that run defense for the 49ers, we didn't even mention that. That has been the strength, not the strength, but that has been something the back half of the season that they just didn't have. And
and it's crazy to think
3 and 5.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that the God, who's that one guy from the Zach Kerr. You completely forget about a guy like that that's not even on the roster anymore, and it just shows how like good this like interior defensive line already is. Kevin Gibbon was making plays last week, like you mentioned, Contavious Street as well. It's just unreal as to how good this defensive line is playing, and that's credit to the players and a credit to Chris Cassera for coaching up really well.
And I'm looking over at this matchup from week 3, Vinny. So here are the 49ers leaders in pass rushing snaps. Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead tied at the top for 33 pass rush snaps versus the Packers. And the next two guys are Javon Kinlaw and Dee Ford. This defensive line, it's going to look incredibly different. It is not what Aaron Rodgers faced the first time around. And you know what, Vinny? Let's end off here because we're our last topic. We started getting into it anyways. The Packers' run game is versus the 49ers, and I think this defensive line has to play with that a lot. But Vinny, you know who's been amazing is Azeez Al-Shaair, Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw even has come around. This front seven for the 49ers is, to me, as elite as it gets in football. They're the best. And this run game that the Packers are going to be presenting, this to me is the hardest matchup for the 49ers defense because, facing a power back like A.J. Dillon, a guy like Aaron Jones, two guys who together can do everything and more, you're really going to have to account for those guys and really make sure you're on your P's and Q's.
Definitely. Yeah, especially, we talk about how creative Kyle Shanahan is. Matt LaFleur
Shanahan, Joey Bosa.
Matt LaFleur has his own creative tendencies.
Mike LaFleur.
Yeah, right. Like all these guys are named Mike, Matt,
Mike McDaniel.
Everyone's named Mike, Matt, Joey, or Nick in the NFL. I just feel like that. But yeah, Matt LaFleur, I think, has his own, creative tendencies that he has as well that he could use to his advantage because,
absolutely,
who is his, who is he the protege of? Kyle Shanahan. They know what they're doing there. So I think we're looking at a matchup that I think it could go either way, honestly. And, this Packers, it sounds like Fred Warner's going to be out there on Sunday, which I think is going to be huge, obviously. Would I feel better? Would I feel like
hey, Fred Warner said he's going to play, so
and it's an ankle compared to concussion, so it's not as bad as like Bosa's injury.
Well, and I think he even said himself that the injury he sustained that made him miss the game versus Seattle was a hamstring injury, not the same ankle injury. Although he did suffer that ankle injury again versus Cincinnati, he said that didn't affect him in terms of playing for the next week. So I don't worry about that as much from when I first heard it because I think we were all we were more worried than we are now.
Towards ACL.
Yeah, even if he didn't, we thought it was a high ankle sprain, out for a few weeks. Certainly not that. But Vinny, this is the end of our show. Let's end with this. And I didn't say we were going to do this, but I'm going to make us do it anyways, Vinny. Let's talk about game predictions for the 49ers.
Okay.
I'm going to make you go first because I'm still deciding.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
So the Packers are 6-point favorites right now.
Yeah, they are.
I just have a hard time saying that the 49ers aren't going to cover that.
I agree.
I think they'll cover it for sure. If they, God, because me thinking if they win this game, there's no way they don't make it to the Super Bowl, right?
Everyone's saying that, Vinny. I'll say this. I think the Packers are a better team than anyone else in the NFC. But
this
I think
matchup for them is
Tampa
awful.
is a much worse matchup for the 49ers. I'll say
that.
Yeah,
for the 49ers, I would agree with that. I think the 49ers match up better with the Packers this week than they would with Bucs next week.
Or even the Rams. Like, I know
win.
the 49ers have beaten the Rams often, but
3 times in a year.
No, it's not even that. You know who is back, who the 49ers should really care about? It's Odell Beckham Jr., but it's Cam freaking Akers, man. They're getting that running game back exactly when they need it. Shout out running back you, by the way. But Cam Akers, I mean, listen, I'm obviously very bullish on him, but this is going to, no matter what, it's not going to be a fun matchup for the 49ers.
Okay, here's my prediction then.
Official prediction, everyone.
Last time the 49ers played the Packers in Lambeau, Phil Dawson hit a game-winning field goal to send them to the NFC Championship game or the divisional round? Was it the championship game? Right? No, divisional round, because they played the Panthers.
Oh, yeah.
Or was it the other way? Did they play the Panthers first, then Lambeau, then I don't know. Or maybe that was a different year. Whatever.
I'm not up as on my 49ers history as you are, so I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pretend like I know.
Okay. With this game, I think my heart is telling me the 49ers win this game, but my mind is telling me the Packers are going to win this game just because I think they're just so good. But I'm going to follow my heart, and I'm going to pick the 49ers to win by a Robbie Gould field goal. Oh, God. Game-winning field goal by Robbie Gould. He's going to shut everybody up. He may miss an extra point leading up to it, but in Lambeau, in the cold, he's going to hit something with like a 30-yard field goal. Jimmy's going to drive down, do the classic Jimmy, and they're going to win this game 24-21. That is completely with my heart, and I'm saying that prediction with my heart because I could very well see the 49ers lose this game, and I honestly would not be shocked, and I wouldn't be sad if they lost because the Packers are just that damn good. So I think the 49ers win. You see how confident I am in that pick, right?
Oh, yeah, super confident.
Yeah.
So I think I'm with you,
legit,
Vinny.
though, like real quick, like legit, there is a chance the 49ers win this game. Like there is definitely this is a flip of a coin, I think, for me in terms of like matchups, because I think this Packers matchup out of these 3 teams, this is the worst matchup for them. Absolutely. But I could very well see it go either way. I think the 49ers edge it out, though, and they play against Tom Brady in the NFC Championship game, Jimmy G versus Tom Brady. That would be nuts, but that's part of why I want to pick. I just want to see it. But
hey, and I'll say this, you know what? I'll be a happy camper if the 49ers play in Tampa because I might get to go to that game then, you know? Yeah. It might be a good opportunity for your boy to make it to a 49ers playoff game. But that's not what I'm predicting, Vinny. I think the 49ers will cover and lose this game in similar fashion to the first to week 3. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to drive down the field with a few minutes left and win 34-30, down 27-30 at the end of this game. Look, I think if anyone can beat the Packers, it's the 49ers. I think Deebo Samuel and DeMeco Ryans, Elijah Mitchell, they're all there. I'm not saying I doubt the 49ers, but this Packers team is just better.
I think there's no, like, ultimately, I think they're just better in any team. Like, I think if the Packers win this game, I think they represent the NFC in the Super Bowl.
No question.
But I think it's more of a toss-up if they aren't to win this game. I just think they're just so – and I said it in the beginning of the year, like, when people were having their doubts about, you know, the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, like, you know, his commitment to the team. Are they going to be worse because of it? And I just kept asking people, is Aaron Rodgers on the Packers? Yes. Is Matt LaFleur still there? Yes. Is Devontae Adams still on the Packers? Yes. They're going to be competing every single year. They're going to be the 1 and 2 seed, and they're going to be competing. And look what they're doing now. So I would not be shocked to see the 49ers lose to this team. And I think I think you would like not be as depending on how the game goes. Like obviously, like you're upset just because they would lose and like they're not in the playoffs anymore. But you wouldn't be as upset as if they were to lose that game last week in the manner that they would have lost it if they were to have
exactly.
Back, so.
You can accept the results of losing to what might be the best team in the NFL.
And I think it would still be like a successful season. Like
Absolutely.
I think it's been a successful season up to this point.
Absolutely.
Anything else is kind of just like the icing on the cake. It feels like.
Yeah.
Who knows, man? It'll be fun though.
Yeah, and look, this is my favorite weekend in terms of matchups. I think all season. These 4 games are going to be incredible in my opinion. So I hope everyone looks forward to that. I hope everyone looks forward to the next episode of 49ers University with me and Vinny Benny. Obviously, follow Vinny on Twitter if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter. Follow us on YouTube as well. All in the description below. And be on the lookout for content in the future. We might try and do a Twitter Spaces. We're going to try and figure out something else to do. But yeah, I was
just gonna say I was just texting with Niner Nate. He'd love to join us in a Twitter space potentially this week. So be on the lookout probably either tomorrow or Friday, potentially depending on our schedules. Well, Ben and I will talk about it and then we'll let all of you know. So
yeah. So look out on Twitter for that and we'll see you next week. Hopefully it's a victory Monday. If it's not, we'll be here anyways. And you know what? Maybe we might even take call-ins once we do lose eventually. Maybe not. Okay. You know, if they win the Super Bowl, we'll never do a call-in show. But that'll be it for us this week. Be on the lookout for all the content in the future. I hope you enjoy this week. And the 49ers drama never stops, does it?
Yeah. No.
Peace out, everyone.